Hi there, I'm Jen, this is Remembered Reads, and this is going to be the A to Z survey book tag. I was tagged by a CR Flames fan back in August of 2017, so this has taken me forever to get to, and I apologize for that. And this tag was created by Perpetual Page-Turner, and I will link to both of their videos below. This is a fairly long tag, since obviously there are 26 questions, so I'm going to do this bookshelf tour style. The prompt for the letter A is the author that you have read the highest number of titles from. And according to Goodreads, that author for me is Garth Ennis, who wrote Battlefields, war stories. He wrote Hellblazer for quite a while in the 90s. He was the author of Preacher. Yeah, you can guess that I'm kind of a fan of his, so that's not too surprising. The prompt for the letter B is best sequel ever. And I had a hard time picking one, but if I can narrow it down to two, my favorites would be The Ghost Road by Pat Barker, which is the third in her Regeneration trilogy, preceded by, obviously, Regeneration and The Eye in the Door, all of which are a series about the First World War. And my other choice, since I have had a hard time picking one, would be the more famous sequel to In the Skin of a Lion, which is The English Patient, which just won the Golden Man Booker. Yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie. D is drink of choice while reading, but I'm not usually drinking while reading because I do most of my reading either on transit or at the gym, so maybe water. E is for ebook versus physical book. And I don't really have a preference of one over the other. I like the convenience and lack of clutter of ebooks, and I like physical books for not having to worry about breaking something if you drop them at the beach or at the gym. So, yeah. F is for fictional character you probably would have dated in high school. And the only person I dated in high school is my now ex-husband. And I can't think of a character that particularly reminds me of him, so I don't have an answer to that one. G is for glad you gave this book a chance. And I'm going to pick a book I read recently, which is Winning Ruby Heart, which is an extremely formulaic romance novel, which I usually only hate read, but this one actually surprised me in doing a good job with the formula and also having some interesting social commentary, which I wasn't expecting, so hey. H is for hidden gem of a book, and for that I will pick Going Home by Samau Kakamba, which I never see mentioned anywhere, and I don't even know if it's still in print. And to be honest, when I first read it, I thought it was interesting, but not particularly good. But there are a few bits and pieces of it where the imagery has stayed with me. I definitely think that's a hidden gem since it's so hard to find. It is basically about an Angolan immigrant in South Africa who tells his story to a group of other listeners in a township. I is for important moment in your reading life. And for that, I'm going to mention Robertson Davies' Fifth Business, which is part of his Deptford cycle, which are some of my favorite books. I read this in school, and I read it before we had to read it on the syllabus. And I remember going and shouting at all of my friends that they needed to catch up and read it because it was so ridiculous and brilliant and ridiculously brilliant. I hear some people who don't want to read this because they think it is just about boring, posh people in the post-First World War period, but there is actually a lot more going on in this, and it's just fantastic. J is for just finished, and according to Goodreads, the last two books that I finished, both of which I finished on the same day, were Jhumpa Lahiri's In Other Words, which is a book that she wrote in Italian just to prove to herself that she could write in Italian, more or less, and is musings on the learning of Italian. And also Kimberly Brubaker Bradley's The War That Saved My Life, which is a children's book about a horrifically abused girl who is evacuated from London during the Second World War. K is for kinds of books you won't read, and I have nothing in front of the screen here because there really aren't any kinds of books that I won't read. I suppose strictly speaking, I won't read books that are in languages that I don't speak. Does that count? L is for the longest book that you've read, and I think technically the longest book that I've read was War and Peace, which was a mass market paperback, so it was even longer than that normally really long book is, but I don't have a copy of that on hand, so I think the longest book that I have in front of me is one of these Song of Ice and Fire books, which are all 1,000+ pages. M is for major book hangover, but I don't get book hangovers, so I don't have an answer for that one. N is for the number of bookcases that you own. In the room that I'm currently in, there are a number of bookcases which are partially empty because I'm in the process of moving. And I believe the total number in this room is 6, and there are additional built-ins upstairs, as well as some shelving in the master bedroom. And in addition to that, back in storage in Canada, I think I have a set of 8 IKEA Billy shelves that we didn't take with us when we moved, so I technically own those. O is for one book that you've read multiple times, and I could definitely name more than one book that I've read multiple times, but I think the book I have read the largest number of times is the First World War classic In Westen nichts Neues, or All Quiet on the Western Front, which I talk about a lot in other videos, so. P is for your preferred place to read. And if you follow me on Instagram, you will know that my favorite place to read is on the treadmill at the gym, or occasionally on the stationary bicycle at the gym. Multitasking. Q is for a quote that inspired you from a book that you've read. Embarrassingly, I no longer remember the exact quote, but for a long time I had it as a signature on emails that I sent 20 years ago, so hopefully no one remembers that I did that. In any case, but it came from this book, C.S. Friedman's This Alien Shore, which is a science fiction / space opera that has an interesting take on hacking and an interesting take on perceptions of mental illness, more or less, which is something you don't see every day. And in any case, it had some quote about humanity and alienness, and I don't remember it, but that's the only quote that I've really used for anything, so I don't know what else to pick. Yeah, kind of a weak answer there, sorry. R is for reading regret. And I don't know that I necessarily have any reading regrets, but I do somewhat regret having put a lot of my childhood books in storage so that I don't have access to them, because I have once or twice thought that I would like to reread something like Madeleine L'Engle's A Swiftly Tilting Planet. S is for a series that you've started that you need to get caught up on, and that would be Brian McClellan's newest series in his Powder Mage universe. I forget what the actual series name is, but this is the one that I have read, the first one, Sins of Empire, and Wrath of Empire, which I own, and is upstairs in my living room right now, but I haven't gotten around to reading it, so one of these days. T is for 3 of your all-time favorite books, and I have already mentioned a number of my all-time favorite books, so I'll just throw in 3 more. The only one of my actual favorites that I haven't mentioned yet is The Quiet Violence of Dreams by Kay Selo-Duiker, which I'm not going to talk about because I talk about it in virtually all of my tag videos, but if you haven't read it, you should, if you're able to access it. I know some people have trouble getting a hold of it. I will also mention my favorite book that I've read in translation, which is Dong Thu Hong's novel Without a Name, which is set in Vietnam in the 1970s and is about a 28-year-old who has been basically involved in military conflict for the past 10 years. And I'll also mention my favorite big 2 superhero comic of the past 15 or 20 years, and that is Wisdom, Rudiments of Wisdom by Paul Cornell, which is a Marvel Comics book about the character Pete Wisdom from Excalibur and later from Captain Britain and MI-13. And I just thought this was a really interesting version of both the character and of the universe. U is for unapologetic fangirl of, and I will go with Hellblazer, which I figure is not necessarily my favorite series, but I seem to own a lot of stuff related to it. So, yeah. V is for very excited for this release, and I don't know that I have a real answer to that, although I'm certainly looking forward to the next collection of The Wildstorm, which is the Warren Ellis and John Davis Hunt relaunch of the Wildstorm characters. That is published by DC Comics, but is not set within the DC Comics universe continuity. W is for worst bookish habit. Now, I don't particularly consider either of these to actually be a bad habit, but I know a lot of people who like to keep their books in better condition are horrified by, for example, cracking the spines of books, and I find it virtually impossible to read mass market paperbacks without cracking the spines, and you can see that this has clearly been cracked. And I know a lot of people are also horrified by the idea of taking notes by dog-earing pages. And you can see here that there are lots of dog ears that I have added to this. So yeah, that is my favorite way of marking my place. I'm sure some people would think that that's a bad habit, but I don't think it is. X is for X marks the spot. Start at the upper left side of your bookshelf and pick the 27th book. All right, let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. And we have N.K. Jemison's Kingdom of the Gods. Y is for your latest book purchase. And the last books that I bought were some children's picture books that I sent to my nephew for his birthday. And finally, Z is for the snatcher that kept you up late. Because I don't usually read at home, I don't usually read in bed, but I was super hyped when this first came out, and I think it came out 5 years ago. Whenever it came out, I did want to read it right away, and I think I did read it in bed. So, yeah, not something that happens very often, but there it is. And that's it. So that's, now we have slightly more mess here to go with the mess from clearing stuff out here. Yeah, so thanks to CR Flames fan for tagging me. I'm going to tag the last 3 people who tagged me in tags, because I think the last couple of people who have tagged me are all newer booktubers who won't have done this yet. So I will insert their names in here. And yeah, that's it for now. Ciao.